So my dear friends, we have the session chair. We have Miss Vanita Aggarwal. She's the head of digital practice at EPAM India. And we have our panelists, Mr. Rakesh Kotian. He's head of technology and corporate services India LLP, Dun & Bradstreet. And we have our second panelist, Sukanya P, SVP Tech Area Lead, Group Digital and Technology, Swiss Re. And we have our third panelist, Ms. Preetha Kumar, Director Data Analytics, Providence, India. And we have our fourth panelist, Mr. Bhaskar Sinha, Director R&D Innovation Lab, Schneider Electric. So can we give them a huge round of applause, all of them? You can use the cord. Can we have the mics? Okay, they're already being placed. Yes. Is it working? Yeah, they're placed on the table. Yes, so over to our session chair, Ms. Vanita.
Thank you, everybody. Hi, everybody. Quickly, my name is Vanita Aggarwal. The construct of this session, I will start the whole program, talk about digital transformation. My background is a lot of IT services company. I'll talk about what I feel is the winning strategy for delivering a good digital transformation which does not go bad or gets too delayed. Our esteemed panels here are people from different walks of the industry. They'll talk about it, and then we have people who are data specialists as well. I'll start with a quick thought of what I think are the best 3 areas that you need to focus on to build a good digital transformation journey for any organization. And then you guys please add your thoughts. Please feel free to add anything, and then I'll start with quick questions. Hopefully, this is the area that you work on. Okay. So one of the very common questions that comes to me is that what is digital transformation? When do you decide you need a digital transformation? And believe me, having worked in bigger organizations before, many a times we work with our clients and we come out after discussions and realize, no, digital transformation was not needed here. Yes, they needed some modernization. Yes, they needed some rebuilding, some digitization, but not really digital transformation. For me, an apt case of a digital transformation would be when the business processes being the same, an organization decides to re-engineer their experience completely. They decide that we are very slow. Our GTM or the go-to-market is very large. We take a lot of time to make changes, and that's when they say we maybe want to automate some processes. We want to put a great experience in front of all of that, and now we also want to personalize. We want to collect data. We want to recommend our end customers on what to buy. We want to know our customers. All of this historically, again, we've been doing business for long, right? But I think 20 years before or 25 years before, there's a lot of paperwork. People were doing things manually. So there was no data around it. So when an organization, one fine day decides that, okay, our IT landscape is very old now, we have to bring newness into it. We want digitization. We want great experiences. And we are ready to move, the processes the way digitization wants them to move. The mindset of the people, the stakeholders, the CTOs, CXOs need to be that, yes, we are willing to change our ways of working, and that can only bring a digital transformation. So it's a large promise, and you have to really agree to it. People need to agree to it to start what you call as a digital transformation. Else, many a time smaller programs are called digital transformation, but they really are not. Now, for me, I will divide my whole digital transformation journey into 3 parts, again, very generic. The first part being every digital transformation needs to understand what is the end goal. Right? The business of the person that we are doing the transformation for will not change. But is there a value proposition that you're bringing? Do you know that at the end of digital transformation, how will you quantify the success? Will you be able to measure the success? Also, at times, we talk about what change will bring. Now, in today's world, digital transformation from the technology perspective is easy to do. You can get it done, no problem. But will that change be accepted by the people on ground? There are, you have your B2B customers, you have your B2C customers, you have your employees, your retailers, your distributors. Are they on board with what now new digitized way of working is there or that you're proposing to your customer, some of the skills might become redundant. Some of the processes might be new. People might be not happy to change. So the whole change management aspect of it is very important when you talk about digital transformation. So you walk away from the first phase, which is transforming your business, having a common understanding, and agreeing that these processes need to be modified, automated, modernized, and this is how change will be managed. At some point in time, you also need to simulate, something that you've been doing manually for years and years together. Suddenly, when it becomes automated, you have to be very sure that it gives out the same output as you would expect, because the business, again, remember, is not changing, right? For me, that's the one first big step. The second big step comes when you try to design your transformation. And that, for me, is the principle of 3S, which means that, you have to know what skills you're talking about. You have to talk about the speed that you want, and you have to talk about your spend. Now, trying to design any digital transformation journey without having clear parameters in your mind of what is the tech stack you want behind that, what are the skills that are already available within your organization, and what is the money that you want to spend, right? At the end of the day, ROI will always be one big factor of your digital transformation. Now, in today's world, customer centricity is the must. You cannot, design any program not keeping your customer in mind. Keeping customer centricity at the focus, more often than not, the designing has three main areas, the designing of your digital transformation. The first is your experience. I myself lead the digital experience team in EPAM, and my firm belief is that the experience has to come first. Technology behind, today you use so many apps today, right? What do you know what's the technology behind that? Is it on cloud? Is it on-prem? None of us know that. You use apps, you use websites, you do not know what platforms you're using, what frameworks you're using. What you take back with you is the experience. For me, I'm a very firm believer, the experience needs to be drawn first, the technology can then be embedded to it. Very clear on that. The second part is now you've designed a great, immersive, intuitive experience. People find it easy to use. Now, does that have intelligence? And that's where data comes through, right? And again, we'll talk about data a lot. There are people and specialists here who are only data analytics specialists. So we talk about that. Once you embed data into your experiences not only become intuitive and immersive, they become intelligent. Now, all of this has to be brought to life, and that's where your deployment comes into play. You decide on what your cloud architecture would be. Today we are talking about different customers who have a lot of data which they might be not willing to move from on-prem to cloud. A lot of people still feel cloud is not secure, right? Then what do you choose? You choose a hybrid cloud, you choose a private cloud, you use a public cloud. Again, going back to my first topic, right? You have to see skills. Now, many of these clouds provide a lot of services out of the box. So a person already needs to understand that making a decision of spend, do I need to go to a cloud which provides me A, B, C services which I can use? And the decision of then the deployment of how do you want to build your whole technology stack and deploy, then kind of ends your design phase. Now we come to the third phase. For me, again, the third phase is the most easiest phase, which is the implementation phase. Your service integrator partner will come. He will kind of implement the whole design that you will, and depending on the feedback that came from the first phase to the second phase, and now from the second phase to the third phase. For me, the implementation phase success is really when the key people that you have are core engineers, the architects that you bring onto the ground. They are people who've gone from, bottom to up, from developers to becoming architects. In today's world, we use a lot of out-of-the-box solutions, right? We talk about Salesforce, we talk about SAP, we talk about Adobe. We use a lot of these platforms, but these platforms are built on some technologies. Now, till the time your engineers and your architects understand the technology, I'm not sure if they can build a system for you which is really, really robust. So for me, the implementation part becomes important to the success if you put the right people on ground. And at the end of the day, if people write good code and design well, and the phases 1 and 2 have given the right inputs, the program cannot go bad. Many a times in the implementation phase, we run into projects going red. My argument always, and my finding always, more often than not really, is that something was missed in the phase 1 and phase 2. Implementation really cannot go bad, right? Unless you really bring in somebody who can't code, and which is very, very rare. So the third part of implementation is if you have your core engineers, core designers who follow the best design principles, they do it right. Of course, the feedback from the phase 2, which was the design phase, to the phase 3, which is the implementation phase, is very important. Lastly, I'll close this discussion by saying that when you are doing a digital transformation, you ought to have at least 5 years plan in your mind. You cannot design a digital transformation saying what we are doing today is done, but you've not thought about whether your design and solution is robust enough and scalable enough to run for 5 years for sure. Now, we are in the industry, every 2-3 years, the whole tech stack will change, new frameworks will come, new platforms will come. But when we do design our solution and implement a solution, when we test our solution, we have to be very, very clear it will run and scale to what the business thinks the number of users that would be added and the data would be added for at least the next 5 years, right? That's my take on how we can deliver winning digital transformations. I will stop now, and then maybe we start with you, Rakesh. Rakesh, so my first question to you is, you come from a lot of data background, right? Is this a chicken and egg situation, right? If there was no digitization, would there be data? And without any data, would you be able to give us intelligence? I leave you with that question.
Okay, that's a tough one. Chicken and egg. If there is no data, if there is data, would there be transformation? Well, I mean, I would say data is always existing, right? Data is not just in form of physical form. It's also out there in front of all of us. It's there in our brains, right? It's there in our heart. We see so many things happening all around us. We make decisions surrounding that, right? So data is always going to be there. When humans started to write, learn to write with languages or with signs, that's when we started to capture data. Now, obviously, I don't want to go into too much of history, like, how computers came into existence. But I was telling one of my colleagues today that, transformation actually started when the first computers was invented, right? So yes, I would say data without transformation would not exist. Data is definitely needed. And with respect to data, I would say the current state where we are, fast forward 2022, December 7th or 8th, I lost the track of date nowadays. Where we are right now is because of the pandemic situation that we are facing right now. A lot of things which were expected 5 years from now, we're already in right now. What pandemic forced us to do is rapid virtualization of reaching out to our customers. Whether they are, your customers could be a government agency, or it could be a B2B customer, a B2C customer, or a logistics supply chain company, right? It forced us to change the way we look at data, right? What generally now people talk about is monetization of data. I would say it is not just monetization of data. How do you make the customer experience to such a level where they have everything that they need without overwhelming them, right? So that's where I would say transformation would not, possible without data, because without data, what you're transforming.
Chicken and egg again. So how often do you get pulled into digital transformation deals? Like, you work for your customers. How often do they come to you and say that this is a data which is not really in a digital format now? Can you help us make sense of this data, and then give input to the digital transformation, and then kind of measure the output in some way? You could take 2 years, 3 years after the transformation, but your thoughts on how you help digital transformation?
Yeah, so I work for Dun & Bradstreet, and people who would not know about Dun & Bradstreet, we are a 180-year-plus company, and we specialize in data management, and we call ourselves the world's largest commercial database. But just having commercial database is not just the end of it, right? Obviously, we draw a lot of insights and analytics and all. But before I answer your question in a little bit more detail, what I would say is analytics is a way of making sense of the data, right? But just by looking at analytics doesn't tell you the story, doesn't tell you the picture, right? It will tell you one component or one graph, what it's trying to convey, but not holistically everything. So if you cram all possible, graphical representations, some stat numbers, it's not giving you any meaning till you actually try to figure out what is he trying to do. So now from where we come from Dun & Bradstreet perspective, when we look at our customer, we want to start right from the start of the data that they're trying to make sense out of, So one of the things that we do is we masterize the data for them, right? And we participate in their journey right from masterizing the data to the end aspect. So I'll give a pretty good example, right? So we source a lot of data. Obviously, data in nowadays has become, used in a way where you have so much of regulations to protect the consumer and the companies at the end, right? So obviously, we have a very large program where we manage the data governance to make sure that the data source that we're getting is ethical. That's the number one confidence building measure, right? So if you look at the finance industry right now worldwide, Dun & Bradstreet is one of the key partners for many of the financial institutes where KYCs are done, right? So when we talk about giving inputs, so we would basically take, so if you're, let's say, creating a delinquency score rating for a company, right? So a company wants to partner with another company on a B2B channel. You would want to know who you're partnering with. So you would do your due diligence. And in that due diligence, you want to know various aspects. So conventional way would be you take their financials, you take their industry data, the domain data, and you would try to make sense. But the world has moved on, right? I mean, financial data is not just the only key indicator. You would also want to know, is there any litigation with this company? How are they placed with their debts? Are they paying their debts on time? Are they protecting their consumers? Are they protecting, human rights violation when it comes to manufacturing? All this information is important. So we source this data from various trusted sources, right? Sometimes when the companies want to do KYC for themselves or for ratings that they would want to bring in, they themselves will give us the consent, right? So we would basically go into every step of the way to make sure that the data is collated. Now, how do we make sense of this data? Everyone knows Aadhaar, right? I mean, everyone has an Aadhaar ID. I'm sure, right now, barring few who would not want to have their data, uploaded into the government websites. But Aadhaar has become your kind of your identity. Your PAN is linked to it. Your vehicle registration is linked to it. Your insurance is linked to it. Your bank accounts are linked to it. So with one ID, you get everything, right? And now what are most of the banks doing? They're giving you that level of analytics on their app itself. That's because that linkage is there. That data lineage is also possible. So in Dun & Bradstreet, what we are essentially very proud of is Dun's ID. And what Dun's ID is what I normally call is another ID for a company. And what it does is basically, it's an ID which you have for your entire lifetime. And until the time your company exists, that's yours. No one else will ever have it. All the data that we get, your GST data, your income data, your bank financials, consent-based, obviously, any court API data, any other data from various other sources that we have, they all get linked to this one ID. And obviously, with some of the data engineering, which we were talking about very currently, we create more like a data fabric or a data mesh. And each of these are then sliced and diced with the different algorithms that we have, from machine learning to natural match engines, to make sure that all this data that we are acquiring on a daily basis is also making sense to the customer. Right? And few things that obviously we take care of is something called as data collisions. Right? When you do data wrangling, you also take off data collisions. And when data collisions, you also want to find accuracy. Like today, you had a sale of 1 rupee, but tomorrow you had a sale of 1 crore. Something is wrong, right? Things like that. So that's how we try to make that sense. So this is where we help the customers do the transformation from their digitization. Now, one last thing. I know I kind of took a bit of long route here, but one last thing. In India, the digitization effort that the government of India has taken, I think it's massive,
Phenomenal.
Right? It's showing immense amount of results. I was in a session on ONDC, which is the open platform for e-commerce business, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it. It's actually pretty brilliant in what they are proposing. Right? One thing which jumped out very readily is the manual records right now. How do you make sense out of it? So obviously everyone has learned about deep learning, OCR technology. So we employ those technologies as well to get that the high level of digitization coming back into the data streams, which then helps for the customers to do the digital transformation.
Thank you, Rakesh, for some very interesting points. And yeah, some of the government initiatives have really helped. So hopefully we become a better country to work with in few years to come. Thank you, Rakesh. So Kanya, moving to you. Rakesh did touch upon a little bit of, insurance side, financial side of things. Now, two questions for you. The first question is, you guys work under a lot of regulations, right? Because you work with financials. You are working with the laws of the country as well, right? So how do you, feel about digital transformation? Do you think that being in such a domain somehow inhibits your ability to digitally transform completely? Or do you think that, now we're already there? And then a general statement from you citing that, some of the insurance firms today or some of the financial firms today, how much is the percentage of, let's say, digitization in that domain?
No, thanks for that question, Vanita. So maybe I will take it two steps, right? One is, first of all, when we're talking about digital transformation, programs per se, right? In a company as large as an insurance company like Swiss Re, where we deal with reinsurance for global insurance companies, there is no specific start and end date for a digital transformation program as such. There is one part of the company which is always undergoing transformation. If it's finance transformation that's getting over here, then there is a customer experience transformation that starts, right? And once the customer experience transformation, maybe it's going on in one parallel, there is a HR employee experience transformation that goes on. So honestly, for an organization like us, it's an ever-evolving topic, the whole transformation is. And you're right, insurance is an industry which is, traditionally has been perceived more as a laggard in terms of, the transformation efficiency, because it's not so cutting edge at all times, and you don't really see it also so much, right? But what we don't see also is that with a lot of things happening recently, with the COVID losses, the war in Ukraine, and the US casualties changing, it's put in a lot of pressure on the system itself, which means insurance companies cannot afford to stay where they are at this point in time, and transformation is not a choice. It's more a compulsion, right? So as you rightly said, one is customer experience, for sure. But what is more important is for us to look at more the economies of what we do in terms of transformation, and you clearly brought it out saying, what does it mean for me to move into cloud, for example? Do I just lift and shift my age-old processes and those complicated business models directly into cloud, or do I gain efficiencies while I do that? So that's the next important topic that we keep talking about. And the third one is, it has also allowed us as insurance companies to look at newer business models. Swiss Re, for example, is actually looking at building solutions for our seeding companies, which are the other insurance companies, because we have risk knowledge. We have risk knowledge for 150 years and global risk knowledge, which means we can put this data to best use when we can consolidate all this, bring our information, the customer information, market information, and produce solutions which no single individual insurance company will be able to get. So we've actually started evolving in terms of our business models also. For sure, like you said, regulations is something that we definitely need to care for, and rightfully so, right? Because being an insurer, you can't just deny an insurance policy. We all talk about straight-through processing. We can't just deny an insurance policy with your AI engine without being able to explain why that is so, right? So we believe in the FEAT principle of AI, where fairness, explainability, accountability, and transparency in AI is extremely important for us. We are signatory to some of those commissions, right? So that's where there is always progress, and there is also a little bit of holding back, and rightfully so, like I said. It's the right balance that we need to achieve.
So Kenya, one question. So, data will, Rakesh was saying, right, data will give you a lot of AI, ML. does that already help you in, in your work? Do you already use AI a lot, or do you see use cases for AI a lot in your industry?
Of course, in a lot of places, right? Insurance is one area which has always been using statistical models quite heavily, if you didn't know, right? AI and ML, when we're talking about plain machine learning models, we are basically talking about regression models. And the statistical techniques are what actuaries have been using for their entire lifetime when they've built those models, pricing models, valuation models. We've used these extensively for also predicting natural catastrophes. Now with AI and ML, what is improved is we are able to process large volumes of data. We are able to take into account multiple additional parameters which were not taken into account earlier. And we also have huge processing power. So it's only accentuated our processing. Definitely the modeling or the statistical background was always present in the insurance industry, and now we've moved forward quite heavily in that space, I would say.
In some way, I would call that as monetization of data. Thank you, Sukanya. Thank you very much. Preetha, maybe the next question for you. So you also come from the data space, but now we are talking about the healthcare industry, right? Now, similar question to what I was asking Sukanya. You also work with personal data. The likes of GDPR might be a challenge for you, right? And you have huge data. I mean, I cannot imagine for medical purposes, for individuals, what kind of data would you run to now? Same question as Sukanya to do. Digital transformation, how easy or difficult it is for you? Yeah. And in your domain, do you think you use digital transformation as an enabler to do more, or how?
Yeah, I could relate a lot to, in fact, both of them when they were speaking about their journeys. One commonality that I do see is that most of these organizations seem to be there for centuries, right? And we are talking about moving them ahead into the next, centuries again through the digital transformation. So in healthcare, Providence is again a 180-year-old organization. In the US, we are about 50 plus hospitals and 2,000 plus clinics. So what did it mean for us in terms of digital transformation? So we had a very good understanding that we not only want to introduce digitization, but it has to transform and take healthcare, or rather health, from 1.0 to health 2.0. And what does that mean? So in health 1.0, if we have, let's say, the hospital is at the center of things, right? So you have everything else around it. You have maybe the physicians, the urgent care network, and everything else is around it. That's the health 1.0 scene. But as digital transformation takes place and we go to 2.0, it's the patient at the center, and that to a digitally enabled patient who is at the center. So that's the vision through which we approach digital transformation. Now, definitely, when we put patient at the center, it means, the first few steps, the fundamentals that we take are, can we capture the patient data, the history in terms of their health, in a format of an electronic health record? So those of you who are part of a healthcare industry would know that the very first fundamental step is to move away from the paper charts that we still see very commonly available here into the electronic health records, which is the first point of data collection and data capture. The next few steps, which Providence has definitely pioneered in, because we are, when it comes to digital transformation in healthcare, it is still an industry overall which probably came right at the end, right? But then we pioneered in putting the electronic health record and moving to cloud to expand the computing power that we just spoke about, and then, of course, ensure that the cybersecurity is in place. So having dealt with a huge volume of data, then comes our next stage of problems, the fundamentals being EHR, cloud, and security. Now, when we deal with the huge volume of data, and a lot of change management is again involved in this industry, because we talk about, helping physicians help the patients. We talk about helping the administrative staff help the patients. We talk about helping the patients directly if they have to make their appointments and so on. So a lot of decisions also go into place. But then broadly, if we were to divide the kind of data that we collect and how can we make impact, then one set of problem statements that we deal with is purely related to the experience of the patient themselves. How can we improve their accessibility? How can we basically increase the outreach and make it a good patient experience overall? That's one. The second is the caregiver experience. So how can we make it better for everybody working together within a hospital or even right now in telehealth environment? How can we make the caregiver's experience better? And the third is related to, of course, having a very sustainable revenue, ensuring that affordability is still maintained, and finally, the clinical care outcome. So after doing all of this, are we still able to maintain very high level of care and in fact go beyond? So coming to the whole four-pronged approach of viewing our data, we have analytics starting from operational insights to business insights, and now we are in fact having multiple scenarios of predictive analytics and AI in healthcare across all of these four spaces. So as we progress, if time permits, I can give a few examples, but then one critical example that we have, and it's one of our flagship products that we are working on, is related to brain stroke that I was mentioning earlier during our discussion. And that is a very critical example of how digitization can help, because time saved is a life saved in that situation, and we introduce the right kind of digitization. And we are also introducing the right kind of insights in terms of how long did it take for the patient to go from the registration desk to the time of the needle being administered to the patient. So measuring themselves and knowing themselves better improves them over time. And also, can we predict how long is this patient likely to stay in the hospital? Then we can give them the right kind of rehabilitation facilities. And if we have that at the point of arrival, that empowers the physician a lot more than what they can do without the data around it. So that is taking health to the next level.
Totally agree, Preetha. I mean, I cannot imagine a better fit for data, and especially being used for predictive analysis, than in the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
Thanks, Preetha. Bhaskar, last but not the least. So you had the innovation for Schneider's, right? What would be your thought on, when you guys think of innovation, do you think of digital transformation for some of the processes, or you think of new products itself that you have to bring in, and that innovation, how digital transformation is, what role it plays in the innovation itself? Today when you do innovation, can it happen without digital transformation, or you work hand in hand with your digital organizations to do innovation also?
Thank you for the question. So first of all, at Schneider, we believe that digital is one of the key pillars to achieve sustainability, along with electrification. So there are a lot of digital transformation happening within Schneider Electric itself, where we are part of it. At the same time, we are helping and enabling our customers on their digital journey. So we are seeing both sides, where we are involved in creation of a lot of the product solutions, which is part of the digital journey, as well as we are also internally facing the challenges of the digital transformation. So to your question on how does the digital and the innovation that we do, how they correlate or they don't correlate. For us, digital is at the center. We touch, or we start with generation of the data. So our devices, they are the ones which capture the data, and the data passes through it. So that's the first point. We create the data. Second, we understand that that data needs to be inferred. So that's where all the layers come in, as other speakers discussed. You develop the apps, analytics, and so on. And finally, all of these is here to achieve the business KPIs and business goals. But personally, over the last 2 decades, though I have been responsible for developing many of the digital solutions, I had also been responsible for sales numbers as well. And one of my greatest challenges has been adoption. And when we step back and understand that what are the key challenges of this adoption, to my belief, it's related to people. So we have seen that, one, there's a fear in people. Many times we have seen that the digital transformation happening in India itself, when the first computer came in railways, and there was a fear in the counter and so on. So there's a fear factor. because there could be job elimination. And in fact, I have been responsible for developing many solutions which resulted in a lot of job elimination, but creation of more jobs on the other end. The second area is awareness, where people are not really aware that certain things are possible or what's the benefit of supporting the digital transformation. The third area I would say is where technology itself is responsible. Today we have lots and lots of digital technologies and there are more scope that we see. And I'm part of innovation. I do harness that part where you need more digitization, and that's where we do a lot of innovation to digitize either the data or the office digitization and so on. But if you look at the technology part, there are a couple of things. Number one, accessibility of the technology to people. Second, the ease of use. And third is affordability. So these are some of the factors we see that, if we are able to tackle, it will solve some of the problems related to people, not all. The second area that we see as important is the digitization process itself. So in the digitization process, we again see that there are challenges in the quality of data. For example, pardon me, I couldn't hear half of the things coming in from there because that data is getting echoed and I really couldn't catch it, okay? So the problem is on the quality of the data that we receive, and that's one of the big problems. Availability of data. We have seen that there are digital programs running in our customers' organization. We went to the plant on the shop floor, and we were talking to the digital team, and they said that, hey, we have implemented this digital program for last 1 year, and it's supposed to improve the throughput of the plant, but the plant is not accepting. They are saying that your digital solution doesn't provide any value. And then, together with this person, when we went on the shop floor, we realized that it's supposed to collect all the plant data, all the digital data of the machine, and you have the central monitoring system where you can predict that the machine's downtime is happening. And then the central control room will call up the plant and say, hey, you have a problem with your throughput and your machine. You need to look at it. And they would always say, no, it's a false alarm. And they would not adopt the digital. What we realized when we walked onto the shop floor is during the times when the operator would like to take a coffee break, he would slow down the production and go for the coffee break. While this happened, the central monitoring system raised the alarm that the machine is having a problem, there'll be a production downtime and all that. Now these are some of the problems related to people and digitization that we have to take care when we develop such digital solutions and so on. So to me, I believe that, if we have to succeed in the digital transformation, data is key. We have to keep digital at the center. All our products that we develop, we make sure that the data is captured, it's made available, and they are connected. So that's the first thing that we do. And then that enables more applications, more use cases, which helps the business to unlock new values.
Thank you, Bhaskar. So I think one thing is coming out very clearly, right? From all of what we are speaking, we are all clear that customer experience drives a lot of things, right? Data is then the enabler, and we are already overwhelmed with the data. And think what's more to come with IoT and internet-enabled devices and 5G. There's so much more to come, right? So that will continue. The third thing which has come out, I think, very clearly in all of our discussions is the change, how to manage change, right? All of us understand that with digitization comes the change in the mindsets of people and has to be brought in slowly, less you should, have less acceptance of the transformation that we're talking about. I think this was a very good discussion. Coming from an IT services background, some of the points of views that have come from the industry are really, really helpful. And Rakesh, thank you for that, inputs on how you use data and how you make sense of data. I think sometimes we don't think so much about, how the data has to make sense, and we just worry more about the experience. But I think from your perspective, I understand the data probably makes a more important role, and it contributes to experience like nothing else. Of course, we shouldn't forget the poor clouds and the infrastructures behind the scene, without which nothing would ever work, right? Thank you, all of you, and I will close the discussion now. Thank you all of you for listening to us patiently. Thank you.
So I would like to just add one thing. It so happened that I have been responsible in developing digital solution using AI analytics and all that. And of course, we forecasted the revenue coming out of it. Incidentally, we realized there's more revenue opportunities by making sure that the data is made available, and that service would generate more data compared to the solution.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, everybody, then. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.